Hey everybody, it's PJ from Wisconsin Airgunners, and today we're going to be going through a box to bench with the Airforce Escape UL. That UL stands for ultralight, and this is an ultra light 25 caliber single shot airgun. It comes to us from Airforce by way of DonnyFL. DonnyFL, who from a complete disclosure standpoint is my employer, but we are carrying airguns now. And I wanted to be the first DonnyFL Airforce customer, so I jumped in and grabbed the first one of these that came into the shop. And I want to walk you guys through the setup, because if you've never seen it before, it could be something that might be just a little bit, let's use the word daunting. So without anything else to say, let's jump right in it. The UL comes in a kind of nondescript, well, I guess it does descript on the side, but a plain black box. When you open it up, you're going to come up with a user's manual. Good stuff there, might want to check it out. Warranty registration card, definitely take the time to fill that out. Airforce has great warranty support here in the US. And if you ever have any problems with your Airforce, whether it's the Escape, Talon, Condor, Texan, they will absolutely take care of you. This little envelope, though, is the most important thing in the box. This has a couple of hex keys. I know every time we buy something, we get some new hex keys. You probably really don't need as many hex keys as you get. I know I've got a drawer of them at home. However, in addition to the hex key is this tool. And this is for the installation of the spin lock tank. Your airgun is going to come to you unassembled, if you will. So there are two components in the box: the action and barrel assembly of your rifle and the bottle butt pad assembly. And this is what you're going to need this tool for. So on what would be the left side, there is an Allen screw right there. Your kit comes with an appropriately sized Allen key, and you need to back that out. It doesn't have to come all the way out, but it does have to come out far enough so that you can't see it inside there anymore. When you've done that, you're going to take your bottle and you're going to unthread this, looks kind of like the top of a castle. It's got some cutouts in it, kind of a castle nut sort of thing. So you're going to take that off. That leaves you with your tank assembly here. And it is necessary to push this forward, which does in fact cock the air gun. And you need to do that because this guy is going to go back in here so we can screw the tank together. Now you can do this with just your fingers most of the way. But you're going to get to a point where you're not able to do that anymore. And that's the point where you want to really make sure that your buttstock is in line with your grip. And then you'll see the teeth in there, and those are going to mate up with the notches here. So what I'm going to do when I have it lined up is just keep everything square. And give it that last little bit of tightness. And then I'm going to screw in this grub screw. And your escape is set up and ready to go. Now, if you've never fired one of these, when we get out to the bench, I'll walk through the process for loading and firing. But right now, we have a completed Escape UL. I need to gas it up, and we'll talk about getting a scope on there. And because, as you can see, this is a completely unshrouded barrel, we're going to want to put an adapter on there so I can attach a moderator. So let's stand by while I get some parts, and we'll show you how to take this from basic to ready to go. All right, we're back, and we have the 12mm moderator adapter installed. I did use just a little bit of blue Loctite in order to really just fill in any crevices and really make sure that that is absolutely locked in place and ready to go. There are also set screws on the bottom that make sure you get an absolutely lock tight, rock solid connection there. You don't want there to be any wobble, or as you add a moderator, you're going to wind up getting some clipping. So this one went on very smoothly, and I have no doubts that it's going to work just fine. If you've never put one of these slide-on moderator adapters on and you want to check it out, I'll throw a link up here. I do have a video over on the DonnyFL YouTube page that goes through how to put on a slide-on adapter. So the next thing we want to do is get a scope mounted, but to make that job easier, what I'm going to do is put a Picatinny adapter on the front here. This is not going to be any kind of permanent solution. It's just for ease of use. But I've got one of these relatively inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon. This one's not perfectly sized, but it is a dovetail to Picatinny adapter, and basically it just slides on and you tighten it down, and at that point you're going to have a pick rail so you can attach a bipod out front. Now, if I had a shorter one, that actually wouldn't be a bad sort of permanent installation. I don't think I want something that long hanging off the front of this gun all the time, but that will allow me to put a bipod out here, and then I can address rings and scope. So let's get a bipod. All right, we're back. I've got the bipod mounted. This is a Scandinavian Airguns bipod. Really love this on lightweight setups. In fact, this is the bipod I use when I'm shooting speed competitions. Going to be putting rings on first, and we're going to use a set of UTG Pro POI rings. The scope I'm using is a 30mm scope, so you need 30mm rings, and Airforce includes a dovetail here, so you need rings that are dovetail. The Pro POI Scope rings use Torx bolts in their construction, and the rings come with a set of L-shaped Torx Allen wrenches. I kind of like to use something with a little bigger grip, so I'm pretty sure this is a T25. These Pro rings are US made, out of a single block of aluminum. I have never had an issue with these, and they're pretty much my go-to for a rifle setup. As long as I don't need a 20 MOA lift, or I'm using a one piece, but if I need the POI lift, then I'm probably getting some kind of no limit ring, but I have found these to be really, really nice. So get that. Now I'm not going to tighten this down because this is simply going to be kind of a rough placement just to hold it there. And I say that because I may need to move these forward and back to get my eye relief right. So those aren't going anywhere right now, and I can turn my attention to the scope. In this case, I am using another Leapers product. This is a 3 to 12 by 44. This is their AccuSync line. It's a 30 millimeter tube. As you can guess, 3 to 12. It does come with flip-up scope caps, but we'll give you kind of the naked view there. It's been a while since I've used one of Leapers scopes. I know they've got a whole bunch of new stuff coming out in 2024. I'm excited to see that, but I really wanted to keep this build as lightweight as possible. It's meant to be a truck gun for offhand shooting or shooting, in my case, out of the Subaru. So allowing it to get too heavy, on a lot of the other scopes I use tend to be a lot longer and a lot heavier. This was my attempt to keep the weight down, and my friends over at Leapers UTG were good enough to say they wanted to be a part of this project. So I know I'm going to have to move this one back just a little bit. So once I know I'm centered decently between the available space on the body of the scope, I can replace the top straps and all I'm doing is getting these screws started. And that's so I can make other adjustments without fear of the scope falling off the top of the gun. There's nothing to spoil a good rifle setup project like having your scope take a tumble and potentially damaging it. So this will just get it captive, and then I can start making the other necessary adjustments. Basically the main adjustments that have to be made anytime you're setting up a scope are eye relief, so getting the edge here in line with basically where your eye is going to be as a result of where the butt pad interacts with your shoulder, right? So forward, back, and then you need to make sure your scope is properly leveled. So we're going to try and address those sort of one at a time. Okay, so first we're going to get this moved forward and back so that it's properly set up for me as a shooter. And what I would recommend is that you look at a light colored wall, look through the scope, and you should see a crisp black line around the image. If that line is fuzzy, then the scope is either too far forward or too far back. And you can make that adjustment back and forth until it's hitting perfectly. All scopes have a range in which they operate properly. So, excuse me, if you get it sort of to the middle of that range, then when you go shoot at a bench where that distance might be different, or you're shooting at an incline, or you're shooting offhand, if you use the middle of that distance, so kind of pull it back, okay, that's where it gets fuzzy, pull it forward, okay, that's where I start to lose it, now I'm going to bring that back into the middle. You set yourself up for the best chance of success with your scope in all situations. So I kind of recommend trying to find that middle ground, and then I'm going to adjust these rings along the line here so that with that distance, what I want to do is have the rings kind of in the middle of that space. I don't want to go tight to the turret, and I don't want to go to the outside. I want to be as much as possible in the middle. And when I've got that, then I can tighten these down. Second part is going to be to make sure that the reticle is level relative to the gun. You don't want the gun being perfectly straight up and down, but the reticle being canted or offset. That will introduce maddening accuracy problems, precision problems. You will not, the gun won't group. Why is it different at this distance versus that distance? It causes all kinds of things, and if there is a time to spend your time and get something right, this is that part of the process. So what I'm going to do is take all of these screws, so I've got 8 screws, there's 4 on each ring, and I am just going to thread them down so they are not putting any tension or pressure on anything, but they are sort of at bottom. So they're about to start causing some tension. And I am feeling with my fingers for the gap in those 2 rings to be equal. I don't want it like this. I don't want it like this. I want that initial gap, because there will be an initial gap there. I want that to be even. And I feel that with my fingers. And if I feel like, as I do now, this gap over here is a little bit bigger than the backside gap, I will do like a 1/4 turn on each of these backside screws, and then a 1/4 turn down on the front side screws until I feel that gap being even. And that's just a start point. Now, I don't want any tension on these screws because I have yet to make my adjustments rotating the scope to get it so it's perfectly in line with how the gun is situated. So if I over tighten at this point, I won't be able to do any of this rotation, and I'm going to have to back things out, so I don't want to do that. Now, there are a number of tools out there that can help you with leveling scopes, and depending on how often you level scopes and how many scopes you own that you need to level, you may or may not want to invest in some of those tools. I've seen things where you're bolting on a light source and you're projecting the reticle onto a grid, and you can use that. I've got a little jack mechanism that can fit on, it's meant for a Picatinny, and it actually uses the bottom flat of the turret system to make sure it's level. Keith and Norm from 68 Whiskey, they like using a line downrange, so they'll hang a line on a plumb bob so they get a perfectly straight line off in the distance, and then they'll put the gun level, make sure the gun is level on table, and then they'll look at that line downrange and they'll make an adjustment so that they see that it is perfectly 90 degrees. There are systems where you put a level on the gun and then a level on the top turret, and you make sure that in those two little liquid levels, they're the same. Lots of ways to do this. What I'm using here in the shop is I have a vertical line over there on the wall, and as I look through the scope here, I can see, I know the gun is level because I know the bipod is level, and I can see that I am up and down on that line. So I just had to make one little adjustment and I was good to go there. So now I'm going to tighten these, but I'm going to take the time to make sure that these are torqued. I've got a Fix-It Sticks torque wrench. This is the little blue one, and this one will give me specific torque measurements so I don't over torque these bolts. Now, there's no real recoil in this gun from a firearms perspective or a spring gun perspective. This is a very low recoil gun. So I don't need a ton of torque here. Usually my goal is between 12 and 15 inch-pounds, and that's really easy to read on the graduations here. So I will just pick one to start, and I'll turn that till about 5, and then I'll go across, so like an X pattern, and I'll put on about 5 there, and then I will match that. And then I will come over to this one. Then I'll come back to this front ring, and I'll go to 10. There we go. And I'll come back here. And then I'll come back and we'll do that final tighten to 15. Last one. All right. A sure way to know that you've over torqued your rings is if you move your parallax wheel and it seems like it's slipping. Like you move it, but it doesn't do anything, and then it kind of catches and catches up. That's a surefire indication that you've over torqued the rings relative to what the body of the scope can handle. So, feeling pretty good, still nice and lightweight. There is one other thing I want to do to this rifle before I get to shooting. So, I'm going to go grab another part, and I'll be right back. So the last piece of the build is going to be to replace the stock Texan style butt pad, which is, you know, completely functional, but not super comfortable, with the Saber Tactical, what is it, ST0070 butt pad adapter, and then an FX Impact butt pad. And this is gonna change this airgun ergonomically to one that holds really well in the shoulder. And again, you know, the stamped metal or cut metal with a little bit of foamy on there, perfectly functional, but I want more than just functional. So this is a really simple, simple swap. Basically just take out one Allen bolt. And you need to set this someplace safe because you never know when you might want to put it back on. And then you take Saber Tactical's part, and it fits into that same location. And there you go. Now, in order to fit the impact butt pad on, all you do is take that part, as well as the thumb wheel assembly. And then that goes on, and you're able to adjust the height there. You would also, if you wanted to, loosen this band and rotate this around. It would, of course, require that you flip this upside down. But there are a couple of adjustments that you can make, and this will depend on your shooting style, your physical characteristics, but basically you're going to wind up with your Escape. And I should say, if you've got a Condor or any of the Texans, this goes together in exactly the same way, giving you adjustable length of pull, you know, where do you want this wing to be situated, a bunch of adjustments that will bring your gun together and make it perfect for you as a shooter. If by chance you have a Crown or Dreamline chassis where for whatever reason you're not using it and you have this part, that has a different base. So this part, the Saber Tactical 0070, is meant for the impact buttstock because that's the one that we sell separately at Saber Tactical. But there are some of our shooters out there who have a chassis that they've either upgraded or replaced parts on. And you know how it is, you wind up with a couple extra parts. If you have one of those Saber Tactical buttstocks laying around from a chassis, you can use this on the 0070 part. It requires that you get a 10/32 Allen screw, and you basically use the same L plate with the spacer, and this will allow you to attach this here. You lose the thumb wheel functionality. This thumb wheel screw just isn't long enough. But if you've got this adjusted and you're the one shooting the gun, you know, tightening this down with an Allen key isn't such a big deal. So I'm going to make the final adjustments on this, and then we're going to head out to the bench and start talking about how we're going to dial this scope in and get this ready for some serious shooting. So stay tuned. We are on the bench, and I want to talk about the things that I have done with the rifle since, well, a second ago when we left the studio. I did take the, let's call it a brace on the bottle. This is how the stock Airforce Buttpad attaches, and I moved it forward about an inch. And with the Saber Tactical Buttpad, that moved me back into perfect eye relief with the scope. I also, here on our longer indoor range, was able to verify at a greater distance that I had done a good job leveling my scope properly. So it's actually lining up perfectly with a couple of vertical pipes and also the seam of the brick as I look downrange. Our indoor range here at our new warehouse is 30 yards from where I'm seated right now, and we're going to set up and I'm going to get this zeroed, and then we're going to do some accuracy testing. But before we do that, I want to get to a little bit of information about trigger pull. So let me grab that scale. So I have verified that the airgun is unloaded, and we're going to do a trigger pull test. If you're not familiar at all with any of the Airforce style guns, you cock them by pushing forward on this lever, loading a pellet directly into the breech, and then bringing that back. And that automatically sets the safety, so that has to be pushed forward before you can fire. One pound, 12 ounces. 1 pound, 9.5 ounces. 1 pound, 5.7 ounces. So the average is 1 pound 9 ounces. Not bad. Okay, I have the scope zeroed and I am ready to show you guys a group. So camera is downrange. We're at 31 yards right now where I have the bench set, and let's do some shooting. That one swum off to the right. All right, let's go down and take a look. So I think actually the first 3 shots went right into that hole. And then this one came here and that one came here. That whole distance is maybe 3/4 of an inch. I'll have to measure that out. Filling the escape is really easy. It takes a 200 bar or 3000 PSI fill. So you have a Foster quick connect on one side, and once you got that sorted, all you have to do is bring it up to pressure. So let's get some chronograph results. This is from a full fill. Remember, the UL is an unregulated gun, so you will have to expect some measure of drop off as the pressure in the tank drops. Well, that's 8 shots. So 10 shots, starts at a high of 1,054, which frankly is a little bit too fast for most pellets. And after 10 shots, we were at 968, still what I would consider a little bit too high. So here's one of the things we haven't talked about, and that is this rotary wheel right there on the side of the gun. That is a hammer spring adjuster. So on a box to bench video, I don't typically tune a gun. I set it up, I shoot it so you can see what you can expect as a new owner. This is right in the middle of the power range. So there's plenty of room to tune this down if you want to shoot the 25 grain pellets. There is also every bit of likelihood that if we put a heavier pellet like the JSB Hades, that would bring that velocity down. Or if we went up to the 33 grain pellets, we might see those flying at a, well, let's just call it a more reasonable speed, something that is better suited to accuracy. We also have the opportunity to try out some slugs, and there is more horsepower to be had by turning up that hammer spring. Just for reference, after those 10 shots, we are down to just about 2,000 PSI. So we filled it to about 3,000 PSI. Those 10 shots at this hammer spring level took about 1,000 PSI out of the tank. So it's a very small, relatively low pressure tank, which means that if you had to use this in a survival situation where you're hand pumping a gun, this isn't a bad tank to have to use, and it really is capable of putting out quite a bit of power. So I was doing some editing over the holiday weekend and got to thinking about how the adjustability works on this, and how the 5-shot group I did, I don't think did the gun justice. So I decided to come back and do a little tuning. Basically, you have a power wheel that you can dial up or down. So what I've done today is dial it one full number revolution. It's graduated or gradiated from 1 to 16. So I knocked it down 1, regassed it, checked the numbers, came down another one, regassed it, checked the numbers. Basically, I have wound the power wheel all the way down. So right now, I'm shooting at minimum power. It's dialed all the way down, and then I just don't like things that are sitting on the bottom. Backed it off like, you know, like 2 numbers. So we're gonna run another string. I've got a camera down range, and still going pretty fast. Let me show you the last 10 shot string that I ran. So getting pretty, you know, a much narrower band than what I was seeing before, all the way up. What this tells me, and we'll see what accuracy looks like in a minute, but what this tells me is the Escape is craving a heavier 25 caliber pellet. I'm just using the 25 grains. These are the JSBs. And obviously it wants something a little bit heavier. So Hades, a little bit heavier than the 25s. We'll be seeing in the future how those fly. So let's get you a group. Those are all dead raccoons. One more. So that looks pretty good. And all those were hitting right in that 960, 970 range. Again, telling me this gun would be really well set up. As it is, it's over 50 foot-pounds, but really well set up for either the 33 grain or the slightly heavier 26-ish grain Hades. So stay tuned, everybody, because this is really a fun little air gun to shoot. Super lightweight, easy to walk around with. I noticed, I used to have a Condor, and I had a foam kind of cheek piece, but it had holes in it, so you could put pellets in there. I noticed that Airgun Depot carries those. I'm going to see if I can't get one of those, because that would be nice, just for walking around, so you don't have pellets jangling in your pockets. It doesn't take much to get fast at reloading one of these. So I understand that a lot of people like a magazine-fed airgun, but there's a lot to like in this little package. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an update, since the editing over the holiday weekend just didn't get done as quickly as I wanted it to. Busy with other things. And so I thought, I had a little time at the shop today, I could toss in just a little bit of an update before the end of the video. So let's get back to it. It isn't too bad as far as noise goes. It definitely has a punchy sound. I'm using a screw-on Yokozuna with the expansion chamber and then 2 baffles. And I have some more experimenting to do to see whether or not I can get the same amount of noise reduction with just 1 baffle, or maybe if I can make it even quieter by adding a baffle segment. But that's all beyond the scope of today's video. So what do you get if you grab an Airforce Escape UL? Well, you get a very lightweight and manageable airgun. It accepts any dovetail scope or dovetail rail accessories you can throw at it. In fact, this entire front edge is dovetail. You have, with the Saber Tactical parts, the option of upgrading the buttstock. They've re-engineered the trigger guard mechanism, so you can actually put any AR grip you like in place here. So if you don't like the standard Airforce grip, it's pretty easy to swap that out. While it isn't regulated, it does have a hammer spring adjuster, so you can tune it to how you want it to shoot. Accuracy at 30 yards untuned is grouping well under an inch. You guys will have seen sort of an analysis on that. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like here, and definitely more tinkering to do with this airgun to see if I can bring that velocity down and squeeze out just a little bit more accuracy. So if that's something you would like to see me try and tackle, let me know in the comments, because that's often where I get the ideas for new videos. I appreciate your time in watching today's video, and I'd like to thank Leapers UTG for helping me out getting the Accushot 3-12 scope on here. A really nice addition to keep this short, fast, light, and nice clear glass, a useful reticle, and you've got the locking turrets, so if you're not going to dial, no likelihood or less likelihood of throwing off your zero. So until the next video, everybody, shoot safe, shoot straight, and we'll see you around.